We're back, baby. It's official. I'm a Riptide Main. I know. It's kind of gross. Feels weird on the inside. Feel like I'm cheating a little bit. You know what I mean? Like it's a little bit of a side piece thing going on right now. But in this video, we're talking about Riptide and why he slaps, what his matchups look like, and how I did during my ProQuest season. And I think I'm gonna have to tell Reinar soon. It's gonna be rough. Nah, baby, I still love you. You're my number one. I just need a little bit of that rip right now. You know what I mean? I promise. I'll come back. Just a little rip, and then I'll come right back. All right, let's talk about why I'm a rip convert. All right, even LSS knows. That they're like the same thing. They're apes. They're stuck next to each other. There's literally no reason for them to be next to each other aside from their names being both ours. But let's dive deeper into it. So number one, aesthetically, I like him. I think that's the most important part of why you like a hero 90% of the time. It's either you like the way they play or you like the way they look and they make you feel things. Look at him. He makes me feel a lot. He makes me feel so many things. Oh my God. Anyways, sorry. He's green. He's ugly. He reminds me of Reinar. His name starts with an R. There's a lot of things going for him aesthetically. If I really had to complain about one thing aesthetically that I hate about Riptide, it's that he is a ranger. Like if I could fix that problem, I would, but this isn't a perfect world. We don't always get everything we want. We just get 90% of what we want. Okay. So aesthetically, Riptide does it for me. He's disgusting. He's green. He reminds me of home. Okay. The second reason I think Riptide is sick is, I don't know if you guys remember, but I played Reinar with Sigils, D-Reacts, and Tom's Fiendal, right? So I like my green boys tanky. And Riptide is a tanky green boy. Okay. So his second half of his hero text not only lets him be tanky, but it lets him have value. It lets him get value from being tanky. It lets him get value from playing D-Reacts. And I really love playing D-Reacts. It's like my favorite thing in the game, No, I'm not an Oldhim player, but I like when my D-Reacts are interesting. I don't like it when they just do stuff. They just block 4. No. I like when my D-Reacts are cool. And Riptide's traps are probably the coolest things in the game from a defense perspective. He's the only hero who is like doing things weirdly on the defense step. Okay. So I really like that part of him. I hate the ranger part, but I love the turtle part. So, he gets access to some of the most cracked defensive utilities in the game. Some of his D-Reacts come in for 6 from a value perspective, and some of his D-Reacts come in for so much more than that. Okay? A really good tripwire trap, a really good spike trap, collapsing trap, buzzsaw trap. There's so many of his traps that can just turn off your opponent's game plan in the middle of their turn. It's kind of like playing Icelander, where you're like, that was cool that you had a fun idea. I'm not going to let you do that anymore. Right? Right. So 1, aesthetically pleasing. 2, I love myself some defensive, annoying heroes to play. And I think the third most important thing for me right now is that he's not that good. And I'm going to be the first one to tell you right now, this is not a hero that has a super great matchup spread. I think it's advantageous right now, and I'll get into that in a minute. But there are some decks where they flip their hero and you go, well, that's cool. I'm going to go home now. Especially on the mid-range list. The aggro list has some bad matchups too, don't get me wrong. But this mid-range list, and I call it mid-range because that's what the purple Discord has labeled it. It is more like turtle defense fatigue style, But your opponent flips a Kano and you've lost. Okay? 3 of my 4 losses during the ProQuest season, 3 of my 4 were from Kanos because they flipped and they killed me in 3 turns. And there's nothing I could do about it. And now that I've played this deck a little bit more, there are some other matchups that are pretty tough. You know what I mean? Reinar isn't particularly great. A really good Reinar, not a very good matchup, right? Viserai can be so bad. Oh my gosh. Like, it's like the Leviah problem, right? If they flip Turtle Viserai, you're just going to watch them you're going to watch them. You're going to watch them for 12 turns until they have 35 rune chance, and then you're going to die. You know what I mean? Like, I've beaten some. I've beaten one or two Viscerize on the defense plan, but like it's because they let me. You know what I mean? So he's got some bad matchups. And as much as I love Rhinar, which I do have some gameplay videos coming soon, and Rhinar is absolutely really strong right now. It's kind of ridiculous. I hate the Brute Mirror. I hate it with a passion. You know, all three Brutes basically do the same thing. They're all Blood Rush heroes. Rhinar does it with Intimidates and a little bit more defense. You know, Leviah does it with more go again and cheaper cost curves and like Blasphemous flipping for an extra card advantage. And then KO does it degenerately with bullshit, right? And so right now, especially in the PNW where there are so many Rhinar players, there are so many Brute players because of the buffs from the last set. I'm going to armories and tournaments and I'm just playing like 3 or 4, 5 Brutes on my way to top 8, and I'm not having fun. Okay, like serious competitive players in my area are playing Rhinar right now, and it's like I'm just playing multiple Brutes the entire day, every day, and I've played Rhinar for 10,000 million games at this point. I can only play Blood Rush so many times in a row. You know what I mean? And then I can only watch my opponent do it back to me so many times in a row before I'm like, okay, let's spice it up. But I'll be back with Rhinar. Don't worry. This new list, absolute gas, dude. The new cards are wild. Okay, now let's dive into matchup spread, because this is, I think, the most important thing you have to come to terms with if you're a Rhinar player, or sorry, Riptide player. I'm still getting used to saying a different name. I'm sorry, babies. Let's go to the matchup spreads real quick, because it's really important. This is the hardest thing for me to personally when I play Riptide, aside from the fact that he's a ranger, which is still depressing. All right, we're going to do this quick because I don't want to take too long explaining this stuff, but thank goodness Dromai LL'd, because that matchup was dog water, okay? That matchup was unwinnable, pretty much, if the Dromai was any good at all, okay? And so the Dromai leaving is what has opened up Riptide to being pretty okay right now. You know what else has made Riptide pretty good right now? Is the fact that the meta has drastically shifted to a more mid-range, go again and attack pump meta, right? So we don't have a lot of these really overpowered or very weird heroes that do really weird things, right? The game has come to a point where most of the good heroes give go again or pump their attacks. And Riptide loves that because his traps trigger on go again and pump, okay? So when you think about the best heroes in the game right now, you're probably thinking, you know, something along the lines of that, right? You know, you got maybe Prism up there too, right? So you've got KO, the Warriors, and Prism, you know, more often than not considered some of the best heroes in the game, okay? And the first 3 right here, Riptide dominates, okay? KO got a lot stronger with the armory set, unfortunately, so I'd say that matchup has gotten a little bit closer now, but I did not drop a single game to a KO across all of my pro quests. Dory, same thing. Kasai being a little bit more challenging than Dory, but still, they trigger your traps every turn. You outvalue them. You know, their boots don't do too much because you're not really attacking that heavily, right? They do shut off a lot of your extra 1-pointers, but that doesn't matter when you're fatiguing them, and if they ever trigger a reaction, you just get 2 cards out of their deck. And then Prism. And you would think that Prism is an auto loss because Guardians have a hard time into them and stuff like that. But it's really not, because your traps trigger on every one of their heralds. Everyone. They also trigger on every one of the irises. So you can actually get them into a place where you can fatigue Prism, and you can also kind of turn off their heralds and never give them the ability to generate soul because you run so many D-Reacts, right? So I've actually beat a lot of Prisms. You know, granted, I think the best ones in the world, it might be more like a mid. Okay, so I'm going to say Prism is mid. But if these are the 4 best heroes in the game, and this is your matchup into them, we're looking great, okay? Now let's talk about one of the better heroes that I'd say is unfavored. Victor, right? Victor is one of your more tough matchups, and he is very popular right now. However, the mid-range list offers a pretty decent matchup into him. It is your game to lose and their game to lose. If they make a mistake, you can win. And if you play very, very well, you can win. It is very hard. Don't get me wrong. The Victor is going to just block a lot of damage and do a lot of damage back to you. However, It is possible to beat them. It is possible. You just have to be really clever and do a lot of work and set up some really wide turns and do some really cool things with your helmet, right? So it is possible, but that is your slightly unfavored matchup right now. And that right there are the meta heroes. Really kind of are. Those are like kind of like the top tier heroes, if you would, right? So when we look at this matchup spread, it's not that bad. You know, you could argue these guys maybe are both middle, but I would say it's unfavored. But you're really seeing mostly these heroes at the top, a handful of prisms that you can beat, and then a slightly unfavored, maybe unfavored matchup with Victor that you have a chance of winning if you play very well. You know, he could kind of go there, but I'm gonna say he's unfavored. The rest of the heroes, you know, are pretty good for you, right? Assassin, very good. Betsy, pretty good, right? Bravo, pretty good. Dash, super good. Dash IO, good. Fi, very good. Kano, absolute dog water. You've lost. Okay, don't run into Kano. I forgot to put Kano there. Katsu, very good matchup. You know, I'd say Levia, could be either one. This guy can be actually relatively challenging depending, but you can live. And then that's really it. You know, you've got a lot of really solid. Oh, we forgot a Tekla, but Tekla's not popular, right? All right, so that's the list. So these are all of the active heroes in the game right now, and I would say it's not a bad matchup spread. Oh, most of the heroes are kind of up here in the mid, in the 50-50 to positive, and then you have a handful of heroes, 3 of which are not very popular. Kano as your only real auto loss, and then Victor as your probable tournament ender, right? But everything else is a skill to very popular. Like this is a really good spread. And then if you hit the mirror, it's either dog water or mid, because if they're aggro, you do kind of lose, right? So I think that's really interesting. He has a window to shine right now where a lot of these matchups are very positive for you. You know what I mean? They're really good. And I even think Levia can go up. Maybe not. Ethan will kill me. Ethan's a scary guy. All right. So now that we've seen how his matchup spread is, right? And now that we know what's going on, right? Let's look at the overall CC wins for ProQuest Season 5. Over here at the top, 79 wins went to KO. Okay, 54 to Victor, 39 to Azalea, 38 to Prism, 36 to Kasai, so on, right? Now, if we look at this chart, KO, good matchup. Victor, rough matchup. Good matchup. Mid matchup. Great matchup. Great matchup. Auto loss. Great matchup. And then Dromai's gone, right? The chunk right here, the 50% line of your number one competition of decks in the meta is KO, Victor, Azalea, and Prism. Okay? And those are not bad. It's not bad, right? I mean, Victor is your number one problem, right? I would say out of these top heroes, Victor's your number one problem. But these are the winning heroes too. The actual percent of these heroes in the meta, the percentages are way different. And KO is by far a million times the highest ran deck in the ProQuest season this year, right? And Dorinthia, actually. Dorinthia is really high as well. So you're actually running into a vast majority of your matchups, a vast majority of your competition are really good matchups. And for me, during mine, right? Let me pull up my list. In my two ProQuests, I only lost 3 games. Okay. One of them was to an Azalea, which was a freak event. I think it was also my first time ever playing Riptide in person and my 3rd time playing the deck total. And 3 of my losses were to Kano because there's a lot of Kanos in my area, unfortunately, right? But over my event, Azuri win, KO win, Kano loss, Azalea loss, KO win, Mirror win, Dory win, Levia win, KO win, Bolton win, Kano loss. Then in the quarters, I hit a Dash IO win, semis, Azalea win, and the finals unfortunately hit the same Kano who beat me in Swiss, right? So overall, my 2 weekends of ProQuest gaming, I only lost 4 games, 3 of them to Kano, right? And I can tell you right now that a vast majority of my games, I felt very much in control. And if Gem is slightly on your side, Riptide is a great, great choice right now. And I think with the new set, that's going to be something really interesting too. Riptide might be one of the few heroes who has an advantageous position to new, which I think new is going to be the boogeyman for a lot of aggro decks. I think new is going to be a boogeyman for KO and Azalea and Prism and a lot of these weird heroes, right? Like she's going to crush. And these new heroes look pushed, right? But we'll talk about that again in a second. Let's dive into the list so I can show you a little bit of the game plan I had. All right, so we're not going to dive into every single detail of this list because we already kind of did that with Talon, right? An hour and a half of excruciating detail for you guys if you really want to see it at home. You beautiful, beautiful people who are following this channel who are interested in Riptide, go watch that video. It has all the details. But at a super high level, what the mid-range list is trying to do is play an absolute metric load of traps, okay? And D-reacts, right? So you'll see here, D-react, 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 everywhere, everywhere. So you're playing pretty much every one of the D-reacts of the game that you have available, you have access to, and then you're playing beefy attacks that are really annoying to deal with. So 7 damage, 7 damage, 6 damage with a huge on hit, right? 7 damage. You're just being really annoying. 6 damage with a really bad on hit. And then you have some go-agains, right? You've got some Sikkim shots, some Bolton shots, and you got some cute cards that you can do some cute stuff with. You know, Falcon Ring. That was my own little flavor I added to the list. Right? So your general game plan with the list is to stick a D-react in your arsenal and then use it on the defense step. Get some value out of your D-react, whether it's like pinging them for 1, pinging them for 3, turning off devaluing their equipment, right? Turning off on hits for the remainder of the turn, stuff like that, right? You're getting some extra value on your defense step, and then you're sending something annoying to deal with, like a 7 or a CNC or a 7 with an on hit that can really ruin certain decks' days, right? 7. Or you're going to set up a couple cute, cheeky plays during the game to try and squeeze out a little bit more value. And some of those cute plays are things like Sikkim Shot loaded up with New Horizons. You hold that Sikkim Shot in your arsenal until you find a really cool turn with like Premeditate, right? So you Premeditate, Sikkim Shot, load, Remorseless, right? Or you do another version of a cute play where it's like Rabble from hand, Riptide trigger, load Endless Arrow, shoot Endless Arrow. So for a 2-card 8, which is very, very good, right? Or you're doing a cute play where it's like Bullseye Bracers, Bolton Shot, load, shoot, right? Load with Dreadbore, shoot an annoying arrow, or load an endless arrow and shoot it, right? And then, of course, you're a ranger, unfortunately. So you also play one of the most cracked cards in the entire game. And because of Trench and because of Dreadbore, you can do some nifty things like you can load Dreadbore with a blue, not put anything in your arsenal, have 2 floating, Codex, summon up a CNC, right? So you can basically force your opponent to put something in their arsenal and then send a Command and Conquer at it, right? It's like the more expensive, more difficult version of the assassin trick with their 4, right? You can also do another really cute line where you can play Codex from hand with another card in your hand, put it in your arsenal, trench it away, and then play a Remorseless, right? So you can do some cute stuff like that, right? And then you're pretty much looping that for forever. And if your opponent starts respecting you too much, right? If they respect you a little bit too much, that's when you can start setting things up, putting these go-agains in your arsenal face up, getting some extra value for a later turn, or using E-strikes and rabbles to actually do some damage, right? And there's some pretty explosive turns. I mean, not really on the same level as the aggro list, but you have some possibilities of some pretty explosive turns. You know what I mean? You can do things like Premeditate, load, an E-strike, come in for 10. Or you can do Pre-med into Rabble for 7 out of your arsenal, into a Pre-med into an Endless Arrow if they give you enough time to set them up. Or you can do, Pre-med, Bolton Shot with your Bracers, E-strike, go again from hand, load an arrow, and then shoot the arrow from your arsenal. Some really cool stuff you can do, right? And that's the general gist of the list. Another reason this list is so relaxing to play is your sideboard strategy is pretty much, do I want to play Remembrance and do I want to play Pendulum Trap? Some other matchups like Kano, you do have to think a little bit more. You pretty much purge your deck as many red traps as you possibly can, and then you try and race, but good luck. And then your equipment's also super easy to use, you know? Your Perch Grapplers don't do anything but block 2. This is one of the number one reasons I wish he wasn't a Ranger, because his equipment kind of blows for a defensive hero, just like Reinhardt used to. He also, you know, I find it very strange that in every single card with Riptide on it, every single one, he's holding a harpoon, except for his brand new card. But he doesn't have a harpoon. I really wish he had the ability to run a harpoon and just like, oh man, if he could attack with a regular weapon, oh, he would be so strong. Anyways, so that's the general gist of the list, right? And you have some cute tech cards in here like Virulent Touch, right? Because you do have some of those more difficult matchups like Victor, where you really do need to find these very high value turns. So that is also the main reason you're running things like Sikkim Shot. Because if you think about it, Sikkim Shot's kind of a bad card, you know? It's a 2 for 5 go again, which is not very good with no on hits, right? But you're mostly running cards like this because you need to put one face up in your arsenal, and then you need to find a really big turn to push damage into Victor to threaten him if he's just turtling you out, right? And you need to do that a couple times with your Bolton shots and your Falcon Wings and your Sikkim shots, right? You need to set up these big wide turns, and then Virulent Touch can also come in as a solid way to present more damage, more fatigue, and you can kind of, you know, Codex Virulent, and then you can Remembrance your Codexes back and kind of do that forever, right? But yeah, general gist of the list, right? Really strong, performed very well for me in ProQuest season. If there wasn't Kanos there, you know, then I would have probably won that event. But there was Kanos. So, you know, unfortunately Kanos pretty much were the bane of my existence both weekends. But if there's ever a moment where Kano goes, which is looking like it might happen relatively soon, Riptide's going to be even stronger. But now let's dive into part the misfail. We'll take this 5 seconds to talk about these 3 new heroes and how it's probably going to shape the meta for Riptide. All right, so let's talk about the new set. Yeah. All right. So I think this is like an acceptable version of the. I didn't spend too much time putting the heroes in the exact right spot. So don't shoot me that hate mail saying that your hero belongs to be in a higher tier or whatever. Right. We got our good heroes at the top, and I'm not going to go into S tier or anything like that. I'm just going to say they're good because they're winning. And if they don't win, they have a very good game into the heroes that do win, right? So you got KO, Victor, Prism, Azalea, and the 2 warriors, right? You're pretty good tier. You know, I think this is, we can argue basically forever, but you got Kano, the brutes, the remaining brutes. You got, you know, Katsu, who sometimes does well, Bolton, who sometimes does well, and Azuri, who's kind of a fringe pick, but does pretty well in some of these top heroes. Then you got your mid tier. Right? You got your like Teklos and your Riptides that have some absolutely polarizing matchups, right? They dominate certain matchups and they absolutely lose to others. And then you got your like more fringe heroes down here. And then you kind of got your dog water and meth tiers, right? You know, and don't get mad at me, but I think it's just it's based on the stats. These heroes have probably similar win rates to Riptide and Teklo and Dash and Viscerai. However, I don't think they have the same polarizing matchup potential where like Teklo and Riptide can kind of show up, and if Gem is kind to them, they kind of win no matter what, right? You know, they're more worried about Gem pairings than they are about the meta necessarily, right? So these heroes just don't really have like some freebies, you know? And then we got our 3 new heroes, and I'm gonna preface this with everything I'm about to say is speculative, right? There's no way to know for sure. I can only go on my basic instincts, and I can only go on what I'm seeing from other content creators and, you know, Talishar and stuff like that right now, right? But I have the feeling these heroes are pushed. I have a feeling. I feel like new for sure is going to, you know, and again, for sure is a very heavy statement to say. I think new is going to go up here somewhere, okay? And I say that because I've played her, and multiple people have made videos on her already with not all of her cards spoiled, and only playing this hero for like a day or two, and I was winning a lot of games. And a lot of these content creators are showing some crazy stuff New can do. I can tell you, I would play it into a New as Riptide, and they made me work so hard to take that W. And I ended up fatiguing them, but it was a very close fatigue. And this was a person who's probably been playing that list for a week. And I don't know if they had access to all the cards at that point in time. And they were making me work really hard. And when I played New immediately, I felt the power. So I think she's going to be somewhere here, right? And then we got Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. He is already having some videos out there right now of him doing like 395 damage. I mean, granted, everything has to work out like the pot of gold has to show up, but at the end of the rainbow, but he's doing a lot of damage. He's doing a lot of damage, and he does some very strange things with damage. And he's very evasive from a penalty perspective because he plays cards out of his banish zone. So not very many negative detriments in the game right now impact his general strategy of damage. It's not like a frailty token is going to hurt him because all of his tigers are coming out of banish zone. It's not like these reaction, anti-reaction, defense reactions are very useful into him because most of his pings are for 1 or 2. You know what I mean? So D-reacts even lose value in this guy. So, I'm not sure, but I'm going to put him somewhere in the mid. He's either going to become this super crazy combo deck like Kano that people are going to crack, and then he suddenly is a legend, or he's just going to do a lot of damage, kind of like, your average ninja does, and he has a lot of blues available to him, which makes him very hard to punish, right? And very resistant to Kano, weirdly. And then we have Enigma, who I'm going to say straight up I have the least experience with so far. I haven't even bothered to check him out too much. But the cards I'm seeing are very, very interesting. And we all know that illusionists, at the end of the day, if you give your illusionist players enough time, they're going to figure her out, right? Every one of the illusionists starts off in the bottom tier, and then you give those people enough time, and they're going to figure it out. And illusionists typically break the game in a certain way. They make certain heroes invalidated just by existing. Prism does it to a certain extent. And we have 2 illusionists running around in the wild right now, which will be Prism and her. And, it's going to be interesting what it does to the meta. So right away, I can tell you, New's going to have an impact pretty heavily on your aggro decks, right? It's going to punish Chaos. It's going to punish Azaleas. It's going to punish blue heavy decks, which is the first thing we've seen in a while. It's going to punish these blue heavy decks. It's going to be able to play your own blues against you. And it's going to give you Coronet Peak style interactions where it's going to make you discard a card from hand. It's going to play something. It's going to banish cards. It's going to fatigue you to some extent. And then it's going to be able to play your own blues against you. So I think New is going to impact the aggressive decks pretty heavily. And a lot of these weird decks that do super rely on their blues are going to be punished in a weird way. Enigma has a very high possibility of just deleting Guardians again. Illusionists just have the ability to delete Guardians, to delete Rangers, and to delete Warriors, right? Which is most of our S tier right now, our good tier. You know what I mean? And then ninjas, often, if they're pushed enough, delete pretty much all the mid-range heroes. You know what I mean? They lose a lot of the time to super defensive decks, but they beat people who are trying to gain value out of their D-reacts and then punish back, right? So ninjas historically are really bad for brutes because, or not really KO, but bad for Rhinar, bad for Levia because they have these big beefy blocks, your 6-block chest piece, your D-reacts, whatever. And if all of his attacks are coming in for 2, now brutes have a refrigerator, but we'll see. Now, weirdly, hear me out. Riptide is pretty good into assassins and pretty good into the idea that if you're going to try and run attack reactions to surprise me, I'm just going to turn off your attack reactions. I'm going to make you waste cards. I'm going to ping you down. Also, Riptide runs no blues. So New's hero ability, not that useful, right? Not that useful. So weirdly, Riptide feels pretty good. Now, granted, I was stressing against a player who's only played this hero for a week, but it was also my first time playing them on Riptide. So, you know, we'll see. Riptide might have game at the new. Enigma is working entirely off ward, and Rangers do have access to anti-prevention, and Riptide is special in the way that he can ping your attacks and delete ward. So maybe Riptide will have decent game into Enigma only from the fact that he can slowly ping you with traps and delete your ever-growing ward board state, right? Because even if it has ward 10, one ping will delete it, right? It'll delete it. And then I'm not sure at all really about the ninja. You know what I mean? He's super strong in the ninjas right now, so I would assume that that continues. But if this becomes a combo deck and you don't present that much damage, then maybe you'll give this Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon person too much time to build up the super wombo combo, and then they'll kill you in the second cycle, right? So things are looking pretty good. Pretty good. The only fear I have as a Riptide player is that New's existence will delete your good matchups, right? It'll delete some of your best matchups because they are not going to be super good into New. And if you have an entire field of, I don't know, Guardians, maybe the only thing that can survive New, then you're going to have a bad time, right? If New's existence pushes these Guardians and these heavy blocking decks up to the top, not good for you, right? But maybe Enigma will keep them down. So I think the positive thing is that Riptide's future looks good. And that is my 10,000 foot view of Riptide so far. I am a Riptide main. I'm going to be trying to crush the new deck. I'm going to try and build my own version, not just, you know, net deck, the one from the purple Discord. I'll be theory crafting. I'll be in the Discord. I hope you guys have a great day. I'll see you around.